Yes, boys, today's video. Should you cut out carbs, yes or no? My challenge today is to make the last video you will ever watch on this bullshit myth of you having to cut out carbs to lose more body fat. It is just absolute bollocks, and I honestly just hit the breaking point yesterday when I was scrolling through Instagram and I just saw a load of people just chatting shit with just terrible physiques, and they're just not in a position to actually say anything about it, for one, and two, don't even understand it. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are now in that situation because they just follow what everyone else says and assume that reducing carb intake is the only way to lose fat and the best approach to actually lose fat. But this just comes down to the fact that as humans, we all want, the quick fix. We want the easy way to get to the goal. And we think if we cut out carbs, we're going to actually have this little smart shortcut to get there quicker. No, bollocks. And I'm going to explain why right now. Really analytical, this video, and this will go into detail. So last video you ever need. So the short answer, no. Cutting carbs is a terrible idea, and here's why. Number one, you'll gain less muscle. If you do not have energy because you are not consuming any carbohydrates and you're not providing your muscles with glycogen, you are going to train with less intensity. And as a result, you're going to gain less muscle, you're going to retain less muscle, and you're also going to burn less calories. Why? Because you're not training as hard, very simply. Two, you've cut out an entire macronutrient. It does not take a genius to realize that if you do that, it's not really by the book. You're going to feel like shit. Reason why? Because that's your main fuel source. You're now relying on fats as fuel. And as a result, you're going to feel shit and your energy levels are going to be inconsistent. So the short answer is no, I would not do it. And not many people do not do it. So don't believe everything you say. And here's why, all right? So why do people actually think cutting carbs works, right? So the first reason is like what I call the false illusion. It's where you lose water weight instantly. So you get a quick win and you go, no way, I've lost 2 kilos. I've lost 4 pounds. Amazing. But what you don't understand is the second word part of the word carbohydrate is hydrate. What carbs actually do is hydrate you. They pull water into your muscles. So for every gram of carbohydrate you consume, you store around 2 to 3 grams of water. So what happens typically when you actually reduce your carbohydrate and flush them out? Well, you deplete your body of glycogen. And what does that do? Drops the amount of water that you are holding. And therefore you look leaner in the short term. It's why when you drink a load of alcohol, you may look shredded in the morning because you're dehydrated. But this is not fat loss, it's just water. If you were to have a look in the first week, the rate of progress you've made, you've probably lost, 2 to 3 kilo. Amazing. Do you think you're just going to keep losing 2 to 3 kilo every week? That would suggest you're losing muscle. That's not really possible to be losing that amount unless you're doing obscene amounts of cardio and putting yourself in a calorie deficit. And judging by the fact that these people are honestly just reducing the whole macronutrient, the carbohydrates, they're probably not tracking their calories because they just want the quick fix. So one, you fall for the illusion that losing water weight fast is the key. It's just an illusion. It's telling you that you're losing fat when really you're not. Second, the reason why people think carbs is the superior way to lose fat is because you automatically eat fewer calories. It's pretty bold to assume that if you cut a whole macronutrient, you're going to eat more calories. Not to mention that there's a maximum amount of kind of protein you should be eating and also a maximum amount of fat. So the rest of your diet should really be comprised of carbohydrates. There's no actual percentage for carbohydrates. It's supposed to kind of make up the rest of your diet. So when you cut out carbohydrates, you do pretty much cut out the majority of your diet. And obviously there's 1 gram, in 1 gram of carbohydrates, there's 4 calories. By default, by cutting, 200 to 300 grams, you're going to remove around 800 to 1200 calories from your diet. So by reducing overall calories, you will create a deficit where fat loss happens. But you have to understand, it wasn't the fact that you cut carbs out, just removing the actual macronutrient, that caused fat loss. It's just the fact that you cut out the carbs is you put yourself in a deficit. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. And we've got to realise why it's bollocks. And it's just a case of, okay, you cut out carbs. What are you trying to do? You're trying to get your body to tap into the fat stores, right? But if you go ultra low carbs, if you go to ketosis, you eat 5 grams of carb max a day, right? Your body switches to burning fat for fuel. But for some reason, people just assume that it's body fat that we burn. No, it's the fat that you're consuming, the stuff that's in the rest of your diet. And at the end of the day, it doesn't mean you lose more body fat. If you eat the same amount of calories, carbs or not, you're going to lose the same amount of fat. It just means your primary fuel of energy has gone from carbohydrate, the better one, to fats now. And now you're just burning that. But I think people genuinely actually get confused by the vocab. Like they think, okay, well, now I'm burning more fat. No, you're burning fats. Fats you're consuming from avocado, steak, eggs, nuts, whatever. You're just choosing that as a source. You're not burning more body fat if you're eating the same amount of calories, if that makes sense. So it just means your primary fuel source is actually fat and not glycogen. So what you need to understand is, if you eat 2,000 calories with no carbs and you eat 2,000 calories with carbs, guess what? You lose the same amount of fat. If anything, you actually lose less fat when you drop the carbs. Do you know why? Because when you have more carbs in your system, and I will explain this, you train harder. You have more energy. And what does that allow you to do when you train harder? Burn more calories. If you have less energy and you are sluggish because you are just relying on fat as a source, which is not a very, very good source of energy, you're not going to be able to train as hard as the person who's had 100 grams of carb prior to his workout. That's what you've got to realize. And when you think about that, you're going to burn a lot more calories. So just think about that for 1 second. Okay, so now we understand why cutting carbs is bollocks. All right, I'm going to explain it in a little bit more detail. So, what actually matters for fat loss? Like, what actually causes the most amount of fat loss? The reason people are cutting carbs in the first place is because we want to lose as much fat as possible, right? So what does it? Number one, calorie deficit. Simply, you need to burn more than you eat. If we take David, and David, on average, burns 2,500 calories per day through walking, breathing, eating, working, training. He burns 2,500. If he consumes 2,500, he's in equilibrium. He stays the same. If he eats more, he gains weight. If he eats less, he burns more calories. Reason why is because if he's burning 2,500 and he's eating 2,200, where does the body have to tap into for the extra 300? The fat stores. So that's why the calorie deficit works. None of this carbs and fats bullshit. Second of all, protein intake. Remember, we want to make sure that we're only losing fat. If you don't have your protein intake in the right place, you'll lose muscle as well. So you're going to lose weight and you're going to be in this false illusion that you're losing fats, but you're actually just losing a lot of muscle because you're not eating enough protein. So you need to make sure your protein is nice and high. And third of all, training performance. Not only do we need to make sure that we're training hard enough, especially in a calorie deficit, to make sure that we're retaining muscle and making sure that we're not losing anything and keeping our body composition in the right place, but keeping carbs in. This is a little secret that I mentioned in the last slide. Keeping carbs in allows you to train harder. And if you focus on retaining muscle and pushing to failure with all of your lifts, you will burn more calories. If you have a better source of energy, such as glycogen, as opposed to fats, which is the primary source, it's why people carb load, it's why everyone includes carbs in their diet, except all these retarded Instagram influencers. And as a result, you will burn more calories by default. Why? Because you can train harder. So that's what you need to understand, and that's what actually matters for fat loss. Very simple. Now, when would actually dropping carbs make sense? Like, when would it be logical? So I guess if you prefer a low carb approach, if you have this warped relationship with food now and like you think carbs are the enemy and no matter what I say, you can't get out of your head, then maybe go and stick to it. But make sure it's not hindering your actual training performance and make sure it's actually not getting in the way of your life. Do not lie to yourself. Be authentic. Challenge beliefs. Have an open mind. One thing I want you to do when you watch this video, just have an open mind. Please don't argue and just like instantly assume everything I'm saying is bullshit. It really isn't. But just have an open mind and don't lie to yourself. You know, at the end of the day, it's your body. You only get one of them. Don't lie to yourself. If you notice that your lifts are going down, but you're trying to just stay on the, you know, the chopping board warrior train, the fucking steak and eggs, 1 meal a day train, then so be it. But don't lie to yourself. I never lie to myself. I tried it and I realised, no, bullshit. So don't lie to yourself. Remain authentic. And if it is working for you, then great, amazing. But if it isn't, probably just go back to the normal diet. And secondly, if you do want to obviously lose a bit of water weight and just flush out kind of all about water retention, you feel that you're bloated, you've got a photo shoot, for example, you need to look your driest and shredded as possible, then it makes sense to cut that out for a day or two, especially if you've got a weigh-in. You know, UFC fights, all of these people will just try and remove as much water as possible, and the first way to do that is just remove all carbs. So that's kind of your short-term fixes, but on a long-term basis, it's just not sustainable. So that's kind of what I'd say there. Now, I've gone into this a little bit, but what do carbs actually do? I'm going to break it down really, really simply. Carbs equal glycogen. What does glycogen equal? Fuel for training. More fuel for training, so more glycogen equals more energy. And more energy equals stronger lifts. And stronger lifts equal more muscle retention and more growth. Very, very simple. Not to mention, there's a lot of talk about the anabolic window back in the day when we were growing up, and a lot of people think it's protein. There is actually an anabolic window, and this is proven, but it's not to do with protein. It's actually to do with post-glycogen replenishment, which is why, yeah, you want a little bit of protein because carbohydrates actually allow for protein to transport better around the body. So what I do is I typically have a protein shake and a little bit of fruit, but the main thing is glycogen replenishment. Because imagine, let's just look at your bicep, right? If we just have a look at the bicep here, imagine this is full, and what it's full with, when your muscles go hard, it's glycogen in there. But when you actually go for a session, imagine the bicep just depletes full of glycogen, and as a result, you're not going to have much energy in there, and it's not going to be able to recover. So in order to, just get that recovery, you pump a little bit of glycogen in there. That's kind of my retarded way of thinking about it. But if you just think of it like that, it does work. So it's really, really key for muscle growth. It's proven to do that. And the reason why is if you have low glycogen, you're going to increase your levels of cortisol in the blood. This is essentially more stress. And that is literally proven to break down muscle. So what you want to do is make sure that you're having that glycogen straight after the workout. And the bottom line is, you want to retain and grow muscle, and you want to lose body fat and keep that muscle mass and keep that body / physique composition looking nice and lean, then you need the energy to lift hard. If you do this, you'll have an actual sustainable diet without burning out, and that's the most important thing. Like, maybe you get away with it at the start, you feel better, you start to rely on fats as your primary source, your body starts converting amazing, but eventually, in my opinion, you just burn out. Reason why, I've done it, I've had clients who have done it. The amount of people who struggle trying this ketosis and then just fall out of love with a gym because they just set themselves up for failure and create this unsustainable diet is actually quite sad, in my opinion. It's why I want to make this video, because I think a lot of people actually just believe everything. And I want to just understand human behavior. It comes down to the fact that we just want the short-term fix. Someone said that cutting carbs will just solve all your problems, so let's just do that. But it's just being lazy. And that's the truth. No one will tell you that. It's just being lazy. And scientifically, it's bollocks. So I wouldn't really be doing that. I mean, look, do me a favour, right? This is Chris Bumstead's diet. I couldn't be bothered to look up anymore, but just look, Chris Bumstead. Look at his physique. It's fucking insane. Look at his diet on a cut when he was on the Mr. Olympia. 2.2k calories. He's in a deficit, right? He had 284 grams of protein because he's a big lad. He's tall, he's heavy. That's about as much as he needs. 19 gram of fat and 199 gram of carbohydrate. He was fucking shredded on stage, hence why he won Mr. Olympia. Now, look at him. Look at you. Do you think he knows something a little bit more when it comes to dieting than you? Probably so. So do me a favour. After this video, go and look up your favourite bodybuilders' diets and see how many carbs they eat. You might find one person in the blue moon who likes to go ketosis. Good for you. I'll show you the other 100 who don't, who probably look better than him and are still in amazing shape, which just proves that you can do both. And the other one, in my opinion, is more than likely better. Not to mention one other thing. We're going back to the old BTEC Sport GCSE PE days. You get to eat more food while staying in a deficit. So we know protein and carbs weigh 4 calories per gram. Fats, on the other hand, weigh 9 calories per gram. That's why they're a very useful tool in a surplus to actually add extra calories without causing that satiation, without actually making you full. But it's why it's also a terrible tool in a diet. And the reason why is if you really, really push the deficit and cardio is very, very high and calories are low, you really, really do savour and look forward to the volume of food you are consuming. You really do appreciate the food you are consuming. Therefore, you want as much food on that plate as possible. So if I have 100 gram of carbs, 4 calories per gram of carbs, it's going to be 400 calories. But if I have the same amount of 400 calories in fats, well, it's only going to be 45 grams roughly. And the reason why, I mean, it might not even be that, is it 9 times, 45, 45 roughly. So I'm going to be less full. Simple as that. It's why vegetables and fruit are amazing, because they're high in carbs, but they're low in calories, basically. But fats are always going to be high in calories. Why you want to be avoiding nuts, avocado, high-fat mince, eggs, to be honest, in deficit. Like personally, I eat egg whites. I have very, very low fat percentage mince. I have a lot of lean meat. I have a lot of vegetables, and it just allows me to eat more. And I get more food volume by keeping carbs in, which keeps me full while dieting. And maybe it's not a problem for you at the start, but trust me, when you're doing 7 days of cardio and your calories are down to 2.1k, you're not fucking around with these bullshit diets anymore. You're actually going to take it seriously, and you're going to focus on food volume. No one will tell you that, but I will. So that's kind of what carbs do. Now, on to the next slide. The biggest misconceptions. I've heard everything, and I'm just going to break them down. Number one, carbs make me sluggish. Well, you're either eating the wrong carbs, mate, or you're eating them in 2 to 3 massive meals. If you have 200 grams of carb in one meal, you're going to feel sluggish. You're going to be put in a food coma. That's why when you have a fucking Domino's pizza or something, you're going to pass out straight after. Reason why is you've just consumed an insane amount of carbs in one sitting. However, what if you were to just spread them throughout the day in a balanced and even manner, and then also have much less carbs per meal? For example, if you were to have 200 grams of oats first meal, no wonder you would feel sluggish. 100%, you're eating too much carbs. Swap that for 50 grams of oats and a little bit of, a little bit of pineapple or banana. You're going to feel amazing. You're going to have a great amount of energy, and that's just going to stop you from feeling sluggish. The reason you feel sluggish is because you're eating the wrong carbs and you're eating them in the wrong quantities, and you're not spacing them over a certain amount of meals. So that's one misconception. 2, carbs make me bloated. Yes, that's the point. Carbohydrates, they pull water into your muscles. They bloat you. But that's kind of the whole point of it, is trying to give you glycogen, and it's trying to give you energy. So if you want to get drier, if you want to remove that bloatedness and you want to do it quickly, you drop your carbs and your salt for 1 day, but not an entire deficit, because that's not a sustainable approach, as we discussed. 3rd point, I have more energy on just protein and fats. You likely just overdid carbs beforehand. Like, again, it's your energy levels were inconsistent with carbs because your meals were inconsistent. You would have 300 grams of carbs here and 100 or so, and you're probably eating the wrong form. You didn't understand the difference between simple and complex carbohydrates. Very, very quick lesson, but always go for brown carbs as opposed to white carbs. Reason why: glycemic index, slow release of energy, all this shit. Look into it. And as a result, you're going to feel a lot better. And finally, I lost more weight since cutting carbs. You just lost water weight, mate, and you cut out the macronutrient. That takes up the majority of your diet, so of course you're going to lose fat because now you're in a larger deficit. The only reason you've lost that weight, though, is because you've basically cut out a whole macronutrient, and you've done so at the expense of the best energy source, potentially, your muscle mass, and the will to live, because I guarantee you, after fucking 4 months of dieting on no carbs, you're going to feel terrible. And that's just the truth. So, final verdict. Cutting carbs does not equal more fat loss. It equals the same. If anything, less. The only reason people lose weight when cutting carbs is because they eat fewer calories, and it's bollocks. If you can diet while keeping carbs in, you're going to have more energy for training, you're going to have better muscle retention, and you're going to have a more sustainable diet. So, in my opinion, keep your carbs balanced. Focus on the actual calories. Keep your protein high. Keep everything nice and balanced. Keep it by the book. And stop fucking demonizing one macro. Remember, also, if you have no carbs, you're going to have no vegetables, and you're just going to be unhealthy as a result. So stop listening to what everyone says. Everyone chats shit, in my opinion. That's kind of what my point is in terms of cutting carbs and why I don't do it. I hope that kind of makes sense. If you do have any questions, you want to engage in a debate, please drop it in the comments. I'm more than happy to get involved. But I thought I'd make this video and just clear things up, because a lot of people just do jump on the bandwagon with no actual understanding. So I hope this video kind of gives you the most basic understanding possible. I think we've covered everything and my reasoning and thesis behind it. Any questions, do let me know. And if you are struggling with diet and you find it all very misleading, just please drop me a DM and I'll be more than happy to kind of walk you through whatever you need. Other than that, boys, today's video over and out. Catch you on the next one.